But when you start conversing with people, when you start empathizing with people, when you want to empower people, when you want to drive innovation, I think the coaching style of leader would play a much more role. And the competencies what we had defined, that can get operationalized, I would say, in a much more, I would say, an effective way.
Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, in whichever part of the world you're joining us. Welcome to today's Future of Coaching session. And you would be able to see a full house today on the screen with our panelists. And we'll soon invite them all. But before we do that, please feel free to use the chat box. Let us know where you're coming from, where you're joining us, and how are you feeling today. And with that, I will hand it over to Ujjaval, and I'll just go in the background. Enjoy today's conversation, everybody. Over to you, Ujjaval.
Thank you, Komal, and hi, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you today and welcome our guests, Manu Saale, CEO of Mercedes-Benz Research and Development India, and Mahesh, who is leading the people operations there. He is the CHRO of that wonderful organization. Welcome, both of you. And also welcoming my colleagues, Smita and Ram. Ram, big gratitude to you today. It's a Guru Purnima day. And on this webinar today, we would be hosting both the leaders on how they are taking coaching to the heart of their culture and what it means for them, their people, their organization, and also Mercedes-Benz worldwide. Both of them are very, very passionate leaders, very passionate for people and the amazing products that they create. We all know that three-pointed star Mercedes is an epitome of luxury, experience, and drivability. And as we all know, that automobile industry is going through a big transformation already, and they are leading that transformation globally. So maybe it's what we call as sustainable luxury. The future of mobility is they are already in the process of creating with an amazing team at the helm of affairs. Manu and Mahesh are leading from the front, and we have had an experience personally to look into the way they operate, and it's absolutely a pleasure to welcome both of you. So first I will invite Manu to say something about himself, and then Mahesh, both of you are most welcome. We are honored to have you with us today.
Thank you very much to Ram and the entire team at Coach Arya. It's a pleasure to be associated with you as a brand, with Coach Arya as an institute, and of course with August Company, like that's in the panel right now. Like you said, Ujjaval, I would have wanted to start with a thanks on Guru Purnima Day as well. It's really humbling to have a chat show with coaches, probably part of our panel and participants as well, who have been into this, and to share some experiences about what we're doing. Thank you also for the kind words about Mercedes-Benz and how we are operating. For the audience, we are, Mahesh and me, operating out of Bangalore in India. It's a hub of digital engineers for all of you who know this part of the geography. Mercedes-Benz Research and Development is the largest R&D and IT center for Mercedes outside of Germany. We are more than 10,000 people that sit out of two towns, Bangalore and Pune, and operate doing some cutting edge innovation, research, development work for our cars. When we talk later, we're going to talk about, what Ujjaval said. We've been setting the context about the changing face of the auto industry, the changing face of luxury mobility, because this brand caters to products in that segment, and how the brand is trying to transform itself, and how, most importantly for this call today, the India office is trying to stand up for the challenges that we have both technically, but towards the coaching conversation, of course, on the people side of things. That's the organization, that's us. And Mahesh, maybe a few words from you.
Yeah, also a warm welcome from my side. And I also would like to express my gratitude, Ram, especially to you, being my coach, mentor, guru. So a big thank you also from my side to Ram as well as the entire team of Kocharya. Yeah, this is my 25th year with the brand, and I'm really happy and also really enjoying the work which we have been doing. And as usual, you stated the transformation which has started on the technology front as far as the automotive industry is concerned. So I'm part of both the technological transformation, but at the same time, I'm also there to witness and drive the cultural transformation within the organization. So it's really exciting time, and yes, looking forward to this interesting discussion.
Yeah. Thank you, Manu and Mahesh. Ram?
Yeah. First, yeah, since both of you referred to Guru Purnima, and there are many people here from outside of India, just to give a context to this word and the term that is being applied. The word guru in Sanskrit has two parts, gu and ru. It essentially means a person or an entity or even a philosophy which leads you from darkness into light. It dispels ignorance. It brings you greater clarity. And in many ways, that's really what the function of coaches are, and coaches should be. In fact, very recently, there's a research that is conducted, and Google has pronounced through various studies that, in fact, coaches are just as good as therapists in terms of helping people overcome anxiety, depression, and many other things without necessarily having to go into the detailed medical and therapeutic process. Having said that, in this particular series of Future of Coaching webinars that we have every second Wednesday, we have addressed many various topics in the past, but for the next few sessions, Ujjaval and I would really like to, and Smita as well, in terms of various corporate entities and leaders who today are redefining themselves in multiple ways post-COVID, because this is a change like no other people have witnessed in the last almost about 100 years. And proving the point, a very, very, very old Greek statement, but even before that, an Upanishad statement, that change is the only constant. Everything is about change, and we are constantly trying to cope with that change. The question really is the answer to change, managing change, is by coping with it, post the change, or we ourselves lead the change in terms of managing that change? And that's really the question that we have talked to Manu and Mahesh about addressing, which they are actually addressing in their own company. So let me just start with this, both you, Manu and Mahesh, and you can take your turns in terms of addressing this. In a very, very broad sense, post-COVID, I do know that you have talked to us. There are multiple changes that you're witnessing in terms of the aspirations and the behaviors of people, which in turns requires certain shifts in the way that the organizations respond, which are cultural value system changes. So you are redefining yourself in multiple ways. So just tell us a little bit more about it and your own vision statement that you articulate to us, Manu, which is extremely impressive. And then we can go into details of specifically how you are planning to address those changes.
Yeah, Ram, thanks for the question. And a great way to start this conversation, I think, especially for the participants to kind of get a feel of what R&D in India is doing and where we were in this journey pre-COVID, and why post-COVID, especially, a topic of coaching and culture changes become even more pronounced for us at R&D in India. I did give a hint already, and for those of you who follow the auto industry, it's not a surprise that the industry is going through tremendous change right now. It's Mercedes who invented cars 136 years ago. 1886 was when Gottlieb Daimler and Carl Benz put the first, gas-powered engine, and people actually let go of their horse carts and started to sit in a vehicle and go from point A to point B. It could take you to places much, much farther than what your horse could take you on, and do business, meet people, do a lot of things. And it's become a way of life. We're all used to it right now. And the industry has seen over 130 plus years now under various brands and names and vehicles, different internal combustion philosophies and formulas. People have been going in a certain way from point A to point B. And pre-COVID already, for my audience here today, pre-COVID already, there was a kind of fatigue within the auto industry about incremental innovations and the way we're doing things. Although an airbag is a wonderful thing, and another system with anti-lock braking is as fantastic as it can be, saving lives and making driving pleasurable, it's still what engineers would call an incremental innovation. It's not as fundamental and earth-shaking as four terms pre-COVID: C, A, S, and E, connected cars, autonomous cars, shared mobility in cars and electric cars, actually shook the industry up, is still shaking it up in many ways. And the society started kind of leaning towards that and said, you know what, we want to completely drive fundamentally differently. We don't want to drive anymore. We want to sit in autonomous vehicles. We don't want to have tailpipe emissions. We want to see electric mobility. And this has shaken the industry like never before. And every OEM worth his or her name is running behind new technologies, trying to fix things. And Mercedes has its own journey doing that, moving from internal combustions to hybrid to an electric first, now to an electric only announcements that we've made around the world. And you can imagine if you're sitting in R&D inside a company like this, inside a brand like this, which invented the car, and where the society is looking up to say, we want you to reinvent it again, the responsibilities are already immense, right? Teams around the world, and I told you when we started that India has the largest team outside Stuttgart, just took it upon themselves to reinvent this product. And the technology that we needed never existed. It still doesn't, right? Whoever heard about radars and lidars powering the car, taking away the human eyes and the brain, having high-powered computers within that can sense the environment and make decisions, so on and so forth. And all of this was already pre-COVID driving change within the company. And I can tell you, you get so blinded by this rush of technical changes that you look at culture a little bit later, you look at technological changes first. So I think we did rush into it as an industry, trying to learn new technologies, put it in the car, look at safety relevance, and kind of get it to our end customers. India was doing its bit too pre-COVID. Now, to cut the chase, COVID changed a lot of things fundamentally. COVID changed the way people move around. While it handbrake movement for some months or years due to the pandemic, when people are coming back on streets, they're preferring personal mobility like never before. They're preferring hygiene within mobility. They're preferring safety within mobility. And probably don't want to touch the steering wheel, want an accelerated way to get to autonomous driving. Sustainability is a discussion around the world like never before. There's COP26 where corporate honchos are attending and making promises about how green and how recyclable and how green their products is going to be. All of this, kind of suddenly we reopen in COVID or in the midst of COVID, realize there's a big stone on the gas pedal right now that's pushing the whole acceleration forward so quickly, so rapidly, that there's not even time to react in many ways. And the people who are supposed to do all of this change, it's the same people who are pre-COVID already in rush hour due to the technologies that I mentioned, and post-COVID, when societies started urging, and all of you on this call probably have read about commitments made across the world for 2030, 2050, 2070 in terms of carbon neutrality. As so much of material science, technology, green, alternate sources of energies and powertrains that have to come on the streets before that and take on. So you want your bulk of sales to go in the green space there. all of this started pushing things so rapidly. Ram, to your question, we really had to take a step back and think for a moment, where are we headed? What's going on? Who are the teams that are working on it? How do they feel? What's the purpose, right? Companies started around us. We have started discussing purpose statements like never before and connecting our people to that. So while the India team had always wished to contribute to this product big time, this took a dramatic change post-COVID. And the one thing that Ram is referring to that is really exciting, even for me to share, I'm doing it for the nth time probably, to my friends, to colleagues, to media, to partners. India with its huge team was doing its bit, was doing wonderfully well, innovation, contribution, to a point where there was an impact of Indian engineers on every Mercedes. And we start kind of zeroed in on a tagline that got everyone around us excited, including ourselves, that said, there's a bit of India in every Mercedes. Now, for a country that's not yet a market for its products, for engineers to stand up, put their hands and say, you know what, that Mercedes that's driving around the world, that product has my software and my design. And post-COVID, Ram and team, due to this big rapid acceleration that we are facing, we've set upon a vision that's even grander for ourselves. And then you'll soon see why people figure so much in the center of my equation. We started telling we want to have a huge part of India in every Mercedes. For those of you who are familiar with the geography, India is a place today with fantastic demographics, with engineering and digital talent that you can never get anywhere else in the world. Millions of engineers graduating out of universities, engineering still a preferred stream of education, coveted one at that, computer science, mechanical, you name it, and data science, electronics, much needed in the auto industry. And it's really a no-brainer why companies flock right now to find their next set of talent here in the country. We just put all of that together and said, if we can put a wonderful team together, if the leaders can redefine and kind of cope with this rapid change that's happening around ourselves, either by taking a step back, slowing down, absorbing, and then redefining, simplifying things for the teams, then we really can work towards this vision of having a huge part of India contribution into a Mercedes. And like Ujjaval introduced us, even for us, I mean, Mahesh said 25, I've been 11 years in this company. Getting into the company and watching that shining star is, still makes my hair stand, right? There's so much about the brand. It's like wanting to leave a legacy behind that when auto industry transformed, my leadership team and my team of engineers could actually contribute out of India. That's the passion that's actually driving us right now. That's where people figure. That's where there was a dire need to take a pause and then reflect about where are we headed and what we're doing. And that's where coaching came into place. I'm sure the rest of the conversation will reveal more about how we're trying to put this together.
I'm sorry, Mahesh, if you would like to add to what Manu has said.
Yeah, I think Manu talked about the mega trends and how the technological transformation and the COVID disruption has came in. I think from my perspective, since we're talking about systemic coaching, I again recall Peter Hawkins and his two letters MA, right, which means pause. So that has given a real pause to the, I would say, the people aspect of it, where people had to rethink, reset, repurpose their lives during this COVID phase. And that also has changed, I would say, the definition of values, because values, they get redefined every now and then. And during COVID phase also, people have really looked into the trust. Then empathy was another aspect which was being talked about. And also from the prioritization perspective, well-being also has become a priority. So again, from the cultural context, many things have changed. We have had those discussions in a couple of webinars, what we had in HR Circle. And as we talk now, WHO also says pandemic phase maybe will get over to a greater extent, but mental being is going to be another pandemic, or it is going to be another crisis, because the recent WHO report says that almost a billion people are impacted with mental issues, which is almost 13% of overall global population. And that's where we see that big challenge in terms of managing the expectations of people, the work-life balance topics, hybrid work models. I think those are the multiple dimensions of this post-COVID era. And I think we have to now see, when we are driving the technological transformation and we are driving the technology towards sustainable mobility, how the culture will really complement that. I think that's going to be the real challenge in front of coaches as well as people like me who are part of the HR community.
Yeah, thanks, Mahesh. See, I mean, essentially, your bread and butter, and plus the emotional attachment that you have to the brand and what Mercedes is and the way that you express it, that your hair stands on end as you see the star, even if you have looked at it for 11 years now, and the fact that you would like to see a lot more of India within that Mercedes, which is music to many people's ears who come from India at this point in time. So that on one side, and our bread and butter comes from coaching, which makes our heart beat faster and make us feel proud of ourselves the same way as you feel proud of yourself. You are looking at innovation, you are looking at managing the change through that innovation, technology, and so on. But at the same time, how do you fulfill the aspirations of people, like Mahesh said, whether it is the well-being, the work-life integration, and multiple other things. And you chose coaching. And I know that wasn't accidental. Mahesh was with us in a program, and what he experienced there, he felt was going to be of great use. So he discussed with us saying, how can I take that forward? And you started on that. So Mahesh, you could go first and you can follow later. And then Ujjaval can sort of go into the specificities of some of the things that we are doing, which might be interesting for the coaching audience here in terms of the, let's say, the processes that we are engaged in with you, which could be of value. So would you like to elaborate a bit on that, Mahesh?
Yeah. So I think, as you referred, I had gone through the program and I was reflecting upon our journey of cultural transformation. And it was not, I would say, coincidence, but we had thought about cultural aspect, and we started working on cultural transformation under a program called Leadership 2020. And this was started some 5 years ago, where we started looking at what is that, those competencies which we need to drive the technological transformation. And this was done by a cross-functional group of almost 140 plus people coming across the world from different hierarchies, different backgrounds, different functions within the Daimler Group. That time now it is Mercedes-Benz. So the set of people, they had defined the new set of leadership values. For example, agility, empowerment, pioneering spirit, purpose, innovation. And then they complemented that with game changers. And this is what we had done already 5 years ago. With COVID, the challenge, I would say, doubled, because we had defined those competencies, we had those game changers in place. But then, as I said, we have to rethink, reprioritize a couple of things. We have to relook into those competencies and values. And that was the real challenge. How do we really drive that post-COVID? And that's where I personally had that realization that coaching is, I would say, a style of conversation, a style of managing people or leading people, which can really play a role and which can connect those competencies pretty well. And some of the companies or leading companies now, even technology-wise, they have also considered coaching as one of their leadership competencies. And this is where we thought that if we bring that particular dimension into our leadership, and typically, as we know, that the cultural change starts from the top and then we can percolate it down. And that's where I thought this could be a medium where if leaders can act like a coach, not in always, because when you have to drive business, you have to also act like a leader at times. But when you start conversing with people, when you start empathizing with people, when you want to empower people, when you want to drive innovation, I think the coaching style of leader would play a much more role. And the competencies what we had defined, that can get operationalized, I would say, in a much more, I would say, an effective way. And the dimension which I've learned also through my personal experience, because some years ago, I was also a client or I was also a coachee. I also had an opportunity, thanks to Manu, to introduce me to this coaching a couple of years back. But I have realized that individuals fundamentally don't change, right? Unless there is a personal situation, personal crisis. So, and coaching also has, I would say, to bring that fundamental change into that individual, it's a journey for an individual also to follow. However, systemic coaching is the approach what we have studied through our course. That also made me realize that this can really benefit the company as well, because you work with individuals who offer themselves to be a coach, starting with being vulnerable, getting into a self-coaching mode, and then eventually start coaching others. So this entire approach, I found it quite complementing to the cultural transformation journey, aligning with the leadership competencies what we had defined, and then the post-COVID challenges what we had to deal with people and also drive the multiple dimensions of our business. I think that was the beginning where we thought coaching can be really a big change, game changer for us.
Manu?
Well, actually, pre-corona, we had a kind of a set formula on vision, mission, strategy. We had wrapped our heads around what is the vision for MB in India, what's the vision, mission for the center, how do we go about with innovation, how do we go about with trust building, what's our North Star, right? We nearly knew it. COVID shook up so many things that people started discussing back again if optimism is at the same level, if trust across the borders is at the same level, if conviction that the auto industry will pull through this transformation is at the same level. It's like fundamentally shaking your beliefs. 2020, you go about in Jan with your business to say, I got this. I know what's needed in this company. I need a few more millions of lines of code and software to get that autonomous car running. Connectivity 5G around the world until cars start communicating back to the cloud, electric powertrains to change and make cleaner cars, all of that. And all of this is fundamentally changed with people, society asking basic questions on the industry, people working within the industry, in this case, MB, having to redefine all of that ASAP, as soon as possible. And I think this led to that discussion. Are we blinded somehow by competence building? Would we rather go in changing the culture a little bit and gain speed, get some more tailwinds for ourselves? Because today, I don't think an L&D is so much focused on whether the last programmer has to learn Python. He or she does it by himself. There's enough online courses, and then they're all motivated to learn a new programming language. It's the culture part that Mahesh and I wanted to bring more on the table, especially to the leadership team that is now tasked with leading. I mean, I've been consistent with my leadership team for the last 10 years. They've all been with me, helped me actually put this company from point A to point B. 10 years ago, we were 1,000 people around, or we are ending this year with 10,000 people, right? And it's the same set of leaders that have been running the ship for me. And all of us sat together thinking in various meetings to say, if you do what you did so far, post-COVID, would that really take us to this grand vision that we have? That's when we said, no, empowering leaders with completely different conversational skills, abstraction skills, simplification skills, people handling skills is absolutely necessary to move ahead. Mahesh was already going through something, and I just dragged him into this and said, we need to turn this into something more systemic. We got in touch, and I'm really happy that despite having some fundamental changes going on within the way we deal and work with people, we are empowering our leaders in parallel with a great tool that's going to help them navigate this complex future.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Manu. In fact, Marshall Goldsmith's famous credo, what got you here won't get you there, I think has come full circle with COVID now. It's pretty clear to everybody that whatever got you here is not going to get you very far in future. One of the most important, in fact, the lessons that I learned working with Mercedes, as well as a few other companies which we are finding traction in now. Traditionally, 3 years ago, whenever we we were approached by companies and we were talking to them and said, they said, okay, can you coach about 5 or 6 hour leaders? And my response for quite some time has been, is it okay if I coach them as a team? or a group, because then it'll be much more economical for you. And I'm not going to charge you per person. I'm going to charge you per hour, maybe a little bit more. And you would be able to link that to the organizational goals. So your ROI factors will be much more clear. And in the process, you will also be building up a team. But by and large, I was really flummoxed for quite some time, because I've been doing this for the last 5 or 6 years. 80% of the people said, no, we don't want to do that. Mainly because senior leaders felt that they don't want to be coached together. So my question to them was, which wasn't always received well, that if you cannot be coached together, then how are you going to work together? That wasn't quite okay. But I think here, fortunately, partly because Mahesh and I worked together, and then based on that, there was a kind of a stuff. You took up that challenge, and you started with group and systemic effort, to which there is an addendum of individual coaching as well. That's one part of it. And the other was, you sort of referred to as moving from the skill set, the competency, into the mindset, into the culture. And that is something we are actually experiencing now. And as a process, Ujjaval, Smita and others, they are learning from the work that we are doing with you. So Ujjaval, would you like to take that a little further in terms of what exactly between you and Mahesh, the way that the program has shifted in some focus from a traditional, what might be called a coaching training, to something a lot more systemic? Even though this is just a group, you are working on team building, and you are seeing some phenomenal traction in terms of the way that people are coming together. So that might be a good conversation. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Ram. And happy to acknowledge and happy to share that Smita is a very able colleague who is working with me on this whole project. And as we all know, for any corporate executive coaching space, we are aware about this term, like there is a sponsor and there is a client, right? I must say that we have got very, very able sponsors in Manu and Mahesh, because they have really taken it to their stride, and it's a heartful sponsorship that we have got. And 13 leaders who are directly working with Manu. They are a part of a journey right now. And it is so much, this is for the first time we have seen an organization who is so committed to bring coaching at the heart of the culture. And for that, what we have decided, that it's not only a regular coach training, it's not only going to make a difference, but how do we bring the systemic approach to it? And coaching is a tool, as all of us know, that coaching as a tool will work in most of the situations, but not all. But when we are talking about culture building, how do we bring individual coaching competencies at the heart of leadership behaviors in the leaders that who are currently working with us? And we are honored and absolutely privileged to work with them. So what we are fundamentally trying to do, that as a systemic approach, how do we enhance? They are already great leaders. Remember that such a great brand is made by great people. Yeah, just that I would like to cite one of the senior vice president product engineering for Google. His name is Bill Kafran. Said once that engineering is easy, people are hard. So they already have a great leadership constellation. So what we are trying to further crystallize is that how, as a leader, they can create consciously psychological safety and trust whenever they interact, how they can be present in the moment, even in the toughest and hardest of the situation, how they can listen at level 3, level 4, as Otto Scharmer puts it, empathic listening and generative listening, and how they work on their own self-awareness, and also their primary methodology to deal with their team and stakeholders is to evoke awareness, and thereby facilitating clients' growth. So these ICF core competencies, we see that as Kocharya as not only just a set of competencies, but they are life skills. Anybody who wish to lead a better life and better work performance, I think these are must-have tools. And we have combined the systemic approach and Kocharya's proprietary speed process into it. And we are seeing some great traction. Starting with, I would like to invite Smita to talk about how did we start with where Pranav Ramnathan, who is the co-founder of Kocharya, is also one of our able partners on the facilitation side. So what we are doing it together there is that how do we bring the hearts of people together, how leaders know each other beyond their ID card, and from there it has started, and now the process is underway. So Smita, and then back to Mahesh and Manu to respond anything that comes up for them.
Yeah. Thank you, Ujjaval. First of all, I want to acknowledge Manu and Mahesh for, bringing this entire concept of coaching and then being flexible with the combining the ICF core competencies and then bringing in the systemic approach, right? Like it's a blended program. In that, we just started, when we started with the speed process, the first step was really about the vulnerable sharing by the participants. And because of the COVID, we've seen that, people were not able to interact as much as possible as they would when they were, going to work. And all of that just, maybe shut for almost 2 years. With this program and with that first step of the vulnerable sharing, Mahesh mentioned about vulnerability, and we just saw the energy of the group when people were talking about their personal stories, and the connect really started happening from that step. So so that was our observation, and again, Manu, going into the details of the program, it is about leading. It starts with leading self, then the leading and teams, and then about the business. I think breaking the program into these 3 steps, and then aligning it with the larger vision, which is about large part of India and every Mercedes. I think that was a great, proposal from your side. So we are just few more sessions to go. We are waiting to see how it will, unfold. So back to you, Ram.
Yeah, very simply put, I'll pass it on to you quickly, Manu and Mahesh. Some of the things that we are trying to do, to be very honest, I wouldn't say you are our guinea pigs. We have done it in many other places. Individually, I have done many such programs. But many of those were sort of forced in some ways. Like Mahesh earlier said, that very often people don't want to change, and it's really some kind of a trauma that forces them to change. And this happened in a few cases where I was allowed to work with teams and groups rather than just individuals alone. But in this particular case, like Smita said, you coined that term of leading with the self and then the team and the organization, and how would like to see a much larger part of Mercedes in this. So we had actually started initially based on Mahesh's desire that you would like to have a bunch of internal coaches, which is fantastic. And therefore it was structured in a way that people would get their credentialing, which they would anyway, even though we are basically, because of the number of hours that is involved in ICF, it's going to be for 60 hours of level 1. But the quality that they will have would probably be much, much higher than that at the professional level. And doing group work in such a way, and then taking into a systemic level, it is a bit of an art. It's not easy. And initially, I think within your team as well, they had some difficulties in terms of attending and pressures of work. And I think with Mahesh's help, we were able to get it all together. So from what I understand, like Smita said, the first and the most important step in any of these exercises is to really get people to bond together as teams rather than just groups. And then in turn, not only the space that they are in the classes or in the coaching space, but in a much larger space, which is what we are hoping to impart and impact on them. And hopefully this will lead into a much larger journey for every one of them in terms of a systemic journey. So Mahesh, would you like to experience, you've been both a leader as well as a sponsor and a participant in this program. So what is it that is coming up for you, both as a coach as well as a participant now?
Yeah, I think that's a tough question. But as a coach, I would say whatever I have learned in my initial association through the advanced coaching training was, I would say, a different level of understanding or getting the fundamentals clear in terms of coaching and my own individual journey as a coach. But now with the systemic coaching, I think I am trying to get different kinds of reflections, which are difficult to get through individual coaching. Team bonding is one aspect you talked about. Vulnerability, which is the one other dimension which I have come across, which works differently in the corporate setup, because people are focusing on their own particular domain, their own particular technology. But when you bind them with emotions together, or when you ask them to share their stories, exchange their thoughts, I think the reflections what you get in those sessions, I think it is impossible to imagine them in individual coaching. I would say they are different. Both have, I would say, their uniqueness that way, individual coaching as well as systemic coaching. Third dimension, what I have seen is also there is a kind of a chemistry match which starts happening between different set of individuals, which was also very unique for me, because otherwise this cannot be achieved by doing certain typical interventions what we do for leadership development. I think those couple of sessions what we did, I think we finished almost 14 sessions so far, and with that I can see that there is a different level of understanding which is really coming out, and it is really converting that vision what Manu had shared into an action plan. And with that split what we have seen, leading self, leading others, and leading business, I can see that there is a I would say that passion and excitement that how can we really convert that into an action plan. I think this is my I would say observation as a coach. As a participant, or I would say as a representative there from HR, I see multiple, I would say, benefits to the individuals as well as to the team. One is obviously they are enjoying their journey as coaches, right? Becoming coaches, and started their coaching with a couple of pipeline of leaders what we have created. So they have become internal coaches, a pool of coaches. Secondly, obviously, as I said, they are started driving that particular vision and converting that into mission statements or action plan. And thirdly, it also creates that culture of coaching, because we are also discussing how some of the situations in their day-to-day life, while they are interacting with individuals, how those can be like a coach-like conversations. So these are three, I would say, major things I can see which are automatically coming from this systemic coaching approach. So I think these are two sets of observations I can see through my journey.
Yeah, Mahesh, before I go on to Manu, both for you as well as Manu, a question that came up was, how exactly are you planning to measure this as ROI in terms of tangible or intangible benefits, as you said, for the self, for the team, and for the larger organization?
Mahesh, should I go?
Yeah.
No, I think it has a context. Everything has a context. I think the context under which we took to coaching, as we described, the state of our business, the state of transformation in the industry, all of that, and the kind of complexity that had to be comprehended, and the calmness that the leaders had right now to display at the same time, is something that led us to coaching, right? And sitting as a CEO, as a sponsor for this whole program, I'm looking at various, if you want to call it KPIs, various KPIs to literally see where this is headed. For the first time, I think we are leading an age group like this. I mean, we have an average age of 30 or below in the company. Age group like this with purpose statements, right? It's not instructions that are being given to people on a regular basis. We've been sharing purpose with them. and kind of aiming to, not hoping for, but aiming to make them settle down with the purpose of the brand of the company to achieve what we want to achieve. And that's the biggest KPI for me, because, as we inch closer towards the bigger India contribution, which is visible in terms of typical business KPIs that I have, I know where it's coming from, because it's very clear that if we leave them like we did before, with the spans that we have, with the remote working conditions that we have, with the world that's so flat that the talent is sitting all over, we'd never get there. So to the colleague who was asking the question, it's not a KPI on coaching on my dashboard that I have, but it's a KPI on the goals that I have for myself that Mahesh and my team helps me with, which is helping me see, are we getting there? Because I know without this, we would never get there. We'd never get there. And I repeat, for the first time ever, there's an attempt to lead a large company with purpose statements alone. A lot has been said, a lot has been written about it. But I think practically on the ground level, for a company to take it that serious, to say, I'm not saying we don't have goal setting anymore. That's not the point. The purpose statement is broken down into goals. But every conversation starts with, Mercedes' desire to make the world's most desirable cars. And for the India team to start with their purpose statement to say, I'd like to see a huge part of the India contributing to those desirable cars in the world in the future. And then to break it down into KPIs. This is how I'm approaching it from my side, to see how we progress.
So Manu, in a sense, if I understood you the way that you express, you are transferring the autonomous driving, which you are trying to build into your cars, into your people. And in many ways that they are going to be autonomous in terms of interpreting the larger vision and the direction that you're setting for the company into specific aspirations.
And totally agree. And I believe that this is the way to go post-COVID in this absolutely, distributed world, future of work unknown. The only way we can bind them together and to let them work autonomous, as you just said it, is with some of these techniques.
That in turn ties up with your sustainability, I guess.
It does. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a guiding principle in the company, right? When a company says, I'm going ahead with an electric-only future, putting all my bets and money on that, that's been so many times asked, and I think clarity of thought from the global team as well helps. You could put your legs on two boards right now and say, I continue to develop IC engines and have instructions there and, to move from Euro 6 to Euro 7 around the world. And then there's Mercedes-Benz that's saying, no, we'd like to give our customers a green-only option to drive around. We've put all our energies, all our passion, all our efforts, needless to say, all the money on that. And talking to capital markets, I've been watching some of these events unfold. They're absolutely impressed with what the company wants to do, and are backing us to the hilt with some of these wishes.
So from where you are now, based on the experience that you have had, which is starting with building that autonomy, as it were, both in individuals as well as in groups that you are currently experiencing, which seems to be going the right way from what Mahesh said. How do you see this taking larger shape in the next coming months, say about a year or so?
Well, I think all of us have been saying that it's a journey, right? It's not technology or a competence building exercise where I can mandate something. It's more a movement within the company. Culture change can't be mandated. It's more a movement, right? And I'm sure all the audience here who've been involved with this topic know that very well. And we're just experiencing that right now. To say the journey has started, we feel ourselves going through that quite comfortably right now. The uptake for coaching as a buzzword, as a principle, as an expected leadership behavior, as an expected leadership competency is really positive. I can see a lot of positive vibes around that word, around that behavior from teams. Some of our first efforts from leaders, and some of them I see, some of my stars are on this call right now, who are also part of the systemic coaching. All they are sharing some wonderful user stories about how they're tackling some of the challenges, business challenges, people challenges that are coming to them, and how coaching is helping converse. So Ram, in the next 6 to 8 months, I hope to reach more, right? I don't want to claim more than what's already possible for a journey that started 6 months ago. 6 months later, I really hope that we penetrate more and more of Mercedes-Benz in India and provide even more autonomy. 10,000 is not a small number, right? To penetrate and to teach autonomy. And for people on the call, if you've been working in this geography, I'm very much a fan of doing this. And I hope I could share some passion virtually too when I said more of India and a Mercedes. But at the same time, let's be practical. We're getting 23, 25-year-olds from universities who need a pair of eyes over their shoulders. They've been parented at home, they've been living, they have not done social work or military work before coming, they've not had a year of internship before coming into work, and they need a bit of supervision. And we're straight putting them on another levels to say autonomy, purpose statements, and Mahesh and I won't find that easy. We know that, right? So we are into the game knowing well that it's going to be a journey. It's going to have its difficult moments, but so committed to say that if you don't take this path, then we'd have to turn this into a blue-collar factory somehow, giving instructions and having a manager for every 10 people. That's not going to happen, right? Not in 2022 and beyond. We're not going to expand leadership capability or capacities. We're rather expanding leadership capabilities right now. That the mind space to deal with 10,000 people suddenly finds itself comfortable and not the 24 hours that we all have in a day. I don't know if I can express myself there.
No, that's absolutely fine. Actually, that really leads me into probably an interpretation or a misinterpretation of what Uday has asked. How do you see this expanding in a larger sustainable way into other aspects of your business? I know that your manufacturing side is already looking into it, but even if in terms of your dealership and so on, do you feel that in terms of communication, let's say coaching approach, is that a likelihood? Is that something that is likely to be of benefit to you?
Well, let's start this way. Coaching is to people today as sustainability is to business, right? And I tell you why I kind of put them in that equation. Every business around the world is suddenly shocked. And while it seems a little natural for an auto industry that had tailpipe emissions to talk about sustainability, all of us on the call probably know that every business, regardless of its size and depth and complexity, even a shopkeeper has to think about the plastic cover that he or she is dispensing. A lot of such things are happening around us right now. A hotel is looking at waste management. A hospital is looking at waste management completely differently. There's no one who's spared. A nursery with plants is looking at if it's using biodegradable, manure, or if it's bringing in some chemicals inside. Just like sustainability has completely shaken up businesses and kind of put them out of their comfort zones of how they did business, coaching is going to put the people side of our story a little bit out of the comfort zone for a certain time being. But just like you and I have, the optimism that we carry in this part of the world, that we're going to conquer sustainability, I'm also very confident that coaching is going to be kind of part of the culture when you be at it for some time. That's number one. Number two is a little bit like spreading it now, right? People within our circles are looking at how MBRDA is responding. Lean and agile is one more part of software that's infectious. Coaching is infectious when it comes to people discussions. And I'm hoping that the rest of, touch points that we have within here, probably international boundaries too, across the border, look at the advantages and benefits of how our leaders are able to comprehend complexity, and that it should spread eventually. That's how I'm expecting it to unfold.
Yeah, you're pretty good with words, Manu. So we are going to note down that part of it as coaching is to people, as sustainability is to companies. I think we would like to use it as a tagline somewhere.
Just quote me every time.
Thank you. Of course we will.
Just joking.
we will acknowledge that to you. So Mahesh, there's a question here in terms of how do you integrate coaching into your competency model, and how are you measuring those is one question. Another one, was there any attrition in terms of your headcount as a result of coaching? But as you said, the numbers are growing. Probably that's not quite true. You would like to answer those questions? Yeah.
So coaching, as I said, it is yet to become a competency, because still we follow the global framework where we continue to believe with the 8 competencies what we have identified. But coaching we would like to use as a style of conversation, as I mentioned earlier, or a style of way to deal with people when they have career discussions, when they talk about or whenever they conduct the performance specific discussions or potential reviews. I think these are a different set of things what we want to really combine. And we just started with the first set of people, those 13 leaders. And the plan is to basically, with their help, to multiply it and spread it to the middle level management as well, so that it becomes a culture. And people are able to not maybe individually change, as I mentioned, that individual transformations, they take a lot of time. But at least with this approach, we are able to create a context or change the context for the people around. We are able to change the environment where people can thrive and achieve, I would say, the business goals as well as their individual aspirations. So that's the current thing. So it is going to be the binding factor to really drive those or operationalize those competencies. Now, there are a couple of things. Attrition is one of them, but how I'm looking at it, and I was trying to just pair with what Manu was talking, right? So on one hand side, we have a future of mobility, right? We are defining to make that mobility more sustainable. On the people side, we have future of work. Because the work is also getting redefined. There is a hybrid work model, which we are discussing right now. And again, coaching plays a great role. On the second hand, we have sustainability. On the people side, we have well-being aspect, right? So we have to make our products, offerings to our customers sustainable. But on the other hand side, we also have to take care of well-being of our people. The third dimension is that we have financial targets. On the other hand, we have mindset related issues. And the last part is we are experiencing on business side supply chain issues, right, globally. On the other hand side, we have talent retention issues, which is the attrition aspect here. And I think coaching is going to play a role in both the aspects. So systemic coaching, my belief, right, correct me if I'm wrong, systemic coaching is going to impact both. But systemic coaching will, I would say, primarily work on those business specific challenges of future of mobility, sustainability, financial targets, and supply chain. And the individual coaching journeys, what these leaders have taken, and they're going to multiply. They are also going to resolve people related issues like future of work, well-being, mindset specific issues, and talent specific issues. Yes, it is also, I would say, not a goal, as Manu said, it's a journey. But yes, we would like to see how this can impact the numbers. But we would like to see this as a cultural transformation and not to convert this immediately into numbers, because we have to also allow time for people to reflect, learn, and then drive the transformation both on the business side as well as on people side.
Thanks, Mahesh. Last question, I'm combining two questions from Anshuman and Rajiv or comments. So one is about, in terms of risks, that if there are any that you anticipate, and also whether the fact that people are becoming vulnerable, sharing about their beliefs and so on and so forth, emotions, is there likely that that could pose any risk in your system?
Mahesh?
So, yeah, I would start. So my personal journey, you can basically, in the individual coaching, I have seen that one can go through that change and transform, or transit. So the transitions are also possible in the after the individual coaching, right? But I think through group coaching, I don't think there is a big risk, or even there is a risk, because if I look at the different dimensions, it is going to help individuals, it is going to help the organization. So from the, I would say, the overall journey perspective, it is going to build the psychological safety and trust, which are the, I would say, the key elements for building success or achieving those business goals. So from my perspective, I don't see a risk. In fact, I see many opportunities in this particular phase.
Thanks. Manu, you wanted to add something?
Mahesh has been with me for more than a decade now, leading HR. And there's one theory that we both kind of discuss and bring on the table. for many years now, right? Even before coaching, and I'll connect that to coaching immediately. We've always maintained and said, people, individuals bring their lives from outside of work to inside, get influenced by things that happen at work, take it back, and kind of the personality keeps on changing, improving, sometimes getting hit with the stress either outside or inside, but it's human beings at the center of the whole thing. And that explained a lot of things that was happening around us to Mahesh, right? Leaders or otherwise, when things happened around us, we both had a conversation and we said, who's the person and what is he or she going through right now? And does that explain a little bit of what's happening at work? And many times, since we experience things at work, many things that happen outside of work could explain what human beings are going through. And I think the question from Anshuman, and I guess he's one of the MB stars as well, happy to see him online here, is that coaching is actually just removing one more layer out of that complex equation and saying, yes, that theory is really true. It's people, it's humans at the center of it that bring themselves with their souls, with their emotions to work. Doesn't matter at Mercedes-Benz, cutting edge of engineering, it's human beings who are coming inside. Coaching is helping us connect with those human beings right now. And that's why I love the concept of going with this system of approaching our people, even if they're doing the most high-tech on their keyboards. At the end, we're touching their hearts and souls with having a chat with them. And yeah, there you unwrap some layers, get closer to some people, and it's actually, we've seen it beneficial, explaining so many things about who is who. Right. One of my first trips with coaching was a hot seat concept. I'm sure you guys all know it, where we as an ex-com sat together, put each one in the hot seat and just told others of who we are. And that unveiling of ourselves helped so much with relation building and explained a lot about how we operate. And therefore, in our leaders are actually getting closer to their teams through coaching rather than through a formal conversation, which did not peel these layers before. If I'm expressing myself. Right.
Yeah, thanks a lot. We are almost pretty much on top of the past that, so we'll just take it to a close. But a couple of questions that have been answered, I'll try and answer them myself. The feedback system is really built into it. Feedback review, progress, performance evaluation, and things are part of the coaching exercise, how they are done. And in fact, our own experience has been that Ujjaval and Smita is that people have been coming forward in terms of how they would like to see this going on. So there's a lot of self-direction and involvement in that. And one of the things is in terms of, like Mahesh said, individual coaching, you have a way of sort of addressing emotions and so on. In fact, in collective coaching, my own experience has been, and I'm sure Ujjaval and Smita also have experienced this, is one of the common statements when my son Pranav, with whom I used to conduct programs in US, systemic programs, they used to ask him, what is it that we need to prepare and bring to the table? He would say, bring lots of tissues, Kleenex. People are going to cry, because that is something that happens, the emotional shift that happens, creating a safe space that happens. So in a systemic coaching, it's a far greater opportunity for the coach to be able to build into that. So I'll close it here. Thank you very, very much, Manu and Mahesh. Ujjaval, you and Smita, if your last words, just closing this conversation. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, thank you, Ram. On behalf of Smita, Komal, and myself, we would like to thank you, all of those who have joined in. We must say that you can reach out to us also in case you have any questions offline. We are a part of this intervention. And if there is anything that we can assist you with clarifying your questions, we should be more than happy to do that. Yeah, but it's a great pleasure to have Manu and Mahesh here and representing their great organization. And it's a great feeling today and ever to be with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
also
you.
From us.
Smita?
Thank you.
Thank you. Till the time we meet again next, we are celebrating the statement of large part of Mercedes, large part of India and every Mercedes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good
Good
night.
night.
And
Thanks a lot.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Komal. Yeah.
Thank
Bye.
you, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Good night. Good day.
Good night.
Good night.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.